Hi, I'm Bailey Bennett Andrade, DEI Media Marketer. In the following presentation, you will hear from Brenda and Franklin Campbell-Jones as they go over one of the four main tools used at the Center, the guiding principles and the ethical tension which may arise when examining these principles. The guiding principles provide an introduction for individuals or organizations to examine their core values as they relate to diversity.
Hi, I am Brenda Campbell Jones,
And I'm Franklin Campbell Jones.
and we are owners of Campbell Jones and Associates. Today, we're going to talk about the guiding principles of cultural proficiency and ethical tension.
So let's talk about the guiding principles.
Well, we each are guided by principles, and usually those values are things that we were brought up with, that some significant person in our lives taught us. And we lead our lives through those values and those beliefs. The guiding principles of cultural proficiency undergird everything that we do to become culturally proficient, culturally competent. And what we need to remember is that while we are being guided by our own principles, as well as these principles of cultural proficiency, we need to be able to figure out for ourselves how the two are going to mesh together. Um, as an individual, we create an organization. We tend to look at organizations as being outside of ourselves, but I am the organization as well as you are the organization. And that organization is made up of people. And as I change, the organizational culture changes. As we collectively change, the organizational culture changes. So it's really important for us to remember two of these principles anyway, which are you cannot not have culture. We all have culture. And the dominant culture serves some well and some not so well. And if we are truly committed to valuing diversity, then we have to constantly look at our culture and determine who is being excluded or not served well and who is being included. And in order to do that, we have to examine the values and beliefs that we have created with the culture in which we live. With respect to the guiding principles of cultural proficiency, we also need to be very cognizant of the system we're creating because, as I said, it's only as good as the people that are in it. And so we use the guiding principles of cultural proficiency as a yardstick to measure how closely we are living by who we say we are. Many times we espouse this is how we are, when in actuality, the values in use are really something else. And so when that occurs, it is more likely that we are going to have to resolve the ethical tension that bubbles up from that yardstick.
So nestled between the principles and the barriers or our ethics. And there's a tension that exists between our struggle in terms of which way should we go? Should we stay with the barriers in terms of how schools are currently constructed? Or should we move towards the principles, which then take us to a culturally confident, culturally proficient organization? And that's the struggle that we have, uh, in this whole process. And the values and beliefs ultimately determines how the organization will perform, how the organization actually act. Should we adopt the principles that lead to cultural confidence becomes the question? Or should we continue to value the ways that support the barriers to proficiency? And so answering these questions will determine will determine how curriculum is developed, will determine how teaching happens, will determine how professional learning occurs, how resources are allocated, how parents engage in schooling, It will determine how policy is determined and what policy is put in place just by the way that we value and the way that we believe. So all of our actions are founded upon that. And if our actions or if our beliefs are established around the barriers, then you'll have one kind of action. If it's fashioned around the principles that are being proposed on the Code of Proficiency, a whole nother organization arises. A whole nother school comes into being. The way that we act and behave then becomes different, more equitable, in terms of how we work with children and work with parents. And so that struggle is a real struggle. Uh, Given that all of us, most of us, if not all of us, were educated by a system that's founded in the barriers to proficiency, not in the principles of proficiency.
So we really appreciate you sharing your time with us today. Thank you so very much.